And we are live. Hello, Becky Vaness.
Hello, Amy.
We are live. So we are talking tonight. What is the title of our show? Well, our preview.
Welcome to our show.
Welcome to our yeah. It's actually a preview. I called it a preview taster of um
Um,
a challenge that me and Becky are. Well, we're challenging each other, and we're going to challenge any of you guys that want to participate in our challenge. And it's no drugs and no unconsciousness of any kind. What does that mean, Becky? No
what does it
drugs.
even mean? Yeah. Well, we were just talking a little bit before that, which is so funny, is because this is from the 10 keys to total freedom, and it's the eighth. It's the eighth key to total freedom. And was it last year or 2 years ago? Amy and I, like once a month or like once every 3 months, went through all of these
Key.
keys before, and it like changed my whole life. Then we got to the eighth key, which was no drugs of any kind, and it was like it wasn't the time. And so we're like, okay, it just was not the time to do this one. And it was so cool because it started percolating, and we started talking about maybe a couple months ago, and then we're like, wow, I think now is the time. Now is the time to look at this. And so here we are talking about this. And we wanted to come even on here because we're like, what does even like no drugs of any kind even mean? To me, it's
Well,
even a little bit confusing.
yeah. So I think you to start off, like first out, what is a drug?
What is a
And
drug?
what Gary Douglas says is a drug is anything that cuts off or diminishes your awareness in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Anything that makes you less aware is a drug.
Yeah. And I think for me personally, I've been avoiding this because somewhere deep down, I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And I have many unconscious choices that I'm choosing. And I'm not saying that that's actually true, but I like it's sort of like those weird hidden things that probably aren't yours, where I haven't been willing to even look at my unconscious choices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so one of the things he talks about, actually, in if you've ever taken an Access Bars class, it's written in the first part of the Bars manual that the
Mm.
strongest addiction we have is to unconsciousness. And I've done a lot of Right Recovery for You classes, and addiction all stems from the addiction to judgment, but the addiction to judgment is the addiction to unconsciousness. And
Yeah.
so when you have a lot of awareness, you in this reality, like there's such an addiction to unconsciousness. Like if you look at like this whole world, like the masses of people are unconscious. Like and like remember we talked before, Becky, about how you're supposed to go out and you're supposed to drink and you're supposed to have a great time and you're supposed to enjoy yourself, and then you do that, and then you're wrong for that as well. So it's
Yeah.
like,
And then you're wrong. Yeah.
yeah, there's like this, like you're supposed to be unconscious, you're supposed to get drunk, you're supposed to take
Mhm.
shots at the bar, it's supposed to
Yeah.
be fun, but then at the same time it's not fun
And then
in the way.
it's not, because then you judge yourself for doing it. And actually there's, that's what we were talking about. There's really there's nothing wrong with going out and having drinks. It's the judgment that you place on it where that comes into place. And it was funny because you're right, we were talking about this, because everywhere you go, as we all live here on earth, and everywhere you go there's alcohol everywhere, basically. Even if you go to school functions, they end up having some sort of like festival, there's alcohol. You walk into a grocery store, there's alcohol everywhere. You go to eat, there's alcohol. But then if you drink, you're wrong.
Yeah.
So it's really like a very interesting way to keep the mass society in judgment and in
That's
wrongness.
great
Yeah.
addition.
Yeah, that actually creates the addiction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the greatest addiction is to the judgment of self, which creates the
Mhm.
unconsciousness and then keeps you stuck in the behavior, whichever, and I mean, maybe we could ask, like, what's your drug of choice? For some people it's alcohol, for some people it may be, like cannabis, for some people it may be food, for other people your drug of choice may be even sex or maybe Netflix,
Well,
you
yeah.
know?
Well, I was actually looking at the book before we came on because, like, I always like to look and highlight. Amy was like laughing. This one was question: is love a drug? Like, are
Mm,
you addicted to this reality's idea of love? Like, you have to have a relationship, you have to be in love, or like, and I was like, oh, I've been avoiding this chapter, but it's so interesting. This isn't really about necessarily just drugs and alcohol, like what you just said. Are you addicted to the idea of love, being in love? I wonder, you know? Um, And then here, like there's another piece that I highlighted where I love, there's another question. Do people use food, alcohol, working out,
mm,
or sex as drugs? Right? Like, are they abusing their bodies or cutting off their awareness? So, really looking at this eighth chapter of the key to total freedom of no drugs of any kind, what is your drug? And well, let's say this, like, what is your choice of judgment? What's your flavor of judgment?
yeah.
Do you judge you? Do you judge your body? Do you judge your partner? Do you judge your business? Do
Your
you judge your bank, your money? I was just going to say, do you judge your bank account?
Wow, yeah.
Because anytime, like what you said, like truly, anytime you're in judgment, like judgment and gratitude do not coexist. Like judgment and creation, like they're not congruent. They don't coexist. So whenever you're in judgment of something, you are cutting off a part or piece of yourself,
Yeah. And that's the addiction.
and that's the addiction.
And one of the things he says here, too, is one of my favorite lines was, the reason we say no drugs is because what we want is for you to find your reality, not by this one,
That's beautiful. Yeah. I
And
want you to
so
find
many,
your reality.
yeah, so many people resist this key. Like because we both
Yeah.
facilitate foundations. And when this, like, even for me, when I first started doing access and taking classes and doing foundation, even though like I was anti-drugs, I still
Yeah.
was also trying to defend them in some way. So that no drugs of any kind. I was like, trying to defend, like, say weed, cannabis. I'm like, well, it grows in the earth and it comes up from the ground and it can heal people who have MS. But it's not about like alcohol or cannabis being wrong. It's about
Yeah.
how you're using it. So it's the same way, like you can go and have a glass of wine, and if it brings more joy into your life, great. But if you are drinking the wine from the energy of like, I don't want to be aware, I don't want to deal with my life, or I don't want to be present, what is that
Yeah.
creating in the world?
Well, or as you're drinking your wine, you're like, I shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah, judging it
I'm
as
a
you're doing.
mom. I'm a husband. I have kids, or like, who knows what like that talk like that goes on, and your like your judgments could even obviously not be yours. They could been your mom's of like, oh my gosh, I have little kids. I shouldn't be drinking, or like or who knows? Like it's not relevant, but I really believe it's more of like what is happening, why you're doing what you're doing. Because I've heard even, Gary before just say, like, hey, if that works for you, great, it works for you. If you want to smoke weed, like if that works for you, know what you
Yeah,
know.
you have to get really the think that what we're inviting and why we're choosing this tool, why we've decided finally we're going to do it. We're not going to avoid it anymore. We only
Mm-mm.
avoided it for 2 years. We're finally saying yes to this 4-day challenge we're going to do, of no unconsciousness of any kind, is to actually get clear on where am I using drugs, any drugs of any kind, to not be as great as I could be, to not show
Yeah.
up me, to,
And
yeah.
oh God, I get so excited when you talk.
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. I have to calm down because you say stuff and it like sparks something in me. Because like we've all, with the other conversation, remember Amy, that we were having with us is
Do not
really
calm down. Turn off.
is, well, how many of you don't fit into this reality and then have like a label of like some type of mental, say bipolar, anxiety, like you judge yourself.
ADHD.
Yeah. And it really, like, that's how we kind of got into this conversation too, of just like, you're like, I am this, in, you either have a drug problem, you have a mental issue, you have, gosh, I was going somewhere with this, Amy. Remember when we were talking to like this reality likes for you to be small and judge you. So they'll put you in a box. It's not that you're aware. They never talk about maybe you actually have an entity capacity. So yeah, maybe you don't hear voices. Maybe you're not a schizophrenic. Maybe you have some type of capacity, but instead, you judge you into the point where maybe you drink too much. Maybe you judge yourself into the point where you're like, hey, this isn't like having this type of label of even some type of mental ability that now I need to take medicines. Now you're like, now I judge me because I'm taking anti-anxiety medicine, or who knows, maybe even antipsychotic medicine. I don't know. Like, it's not really relevant, but I really get from this reality standpoint, you're never empowered to know what you know, be different, and be willing to like just be totally insane.
Yeah.
So, for me, this is something that I've, like you said, don't be too much. Like I was teasing you, like, be too much. Where we really have toned ourselves down. And how do we do that? Maybe sometimes with alcohol, and then we judge ourselves. Or maybe sometimes you have to take some time of anxiety medicine to help because you're just too much for people. And then you're labeled as maybe you have a mental disability. Maybe you're an alcoholic. Maybe now you're a drug addict. When it really just comes down to the never knowing what you know and empowering yourself to be so wild and so wonky and so without judgment and have so much joy that this reality really doesn't even know what to do with you.
Yeah. That. And
Yeah.
the thing about this reality is though that and he talks about this in the book, and I'm really excited to like play and like discover more with this when we start the challenges. Like he talks about how in groups, like that's what you're talking about, like you're like being you, like you're totally out of control, you're everywhere. It happened to me the other day too, Becky, where you were like, Amy, you're everywhere, and I was like, I know. Is it too much? Do I need to like pull a bit? Because like my energy was like here and here and here and here and here, and that's when I'm functioning as me, when I'm being me. And then I got the energy like, oh shit, I'm too much for people now, like I'm too everywhere, I'm being too much. And that's that place where then you go to, okay, well it's okay if I'm on my own, but now I'm in a group with people and they aren't as turned up as I am. So I'm going to have to turn myself down here, dumb myself down, numb myself down to vibrate at the same energy they're all vibrating at. And Gary calls this in the book, he says, groupthink. When people get together, he said, that's why people get together, because they don't want to be totally alone. So he's like, people get together and groupthink, it becomes like a groupthink. So he says, that's what drugs and alcohol are mostly about. So you even see it, like I went to Nashville at the weekend and it's just groups and groups and groups of people getting so fucked up, drunk. Like, but it was interesting to watch it because everyone was so dumbed down and out of it. And I was like, what the hell? And and what he says here is like, in this reality, people make consciousness a team sport.
Yeah.
Everyone is competing to see who's the drunkest, most stupid, and least aware. Isn't that nuts?
I'm sure, like, I'm sure I've done that. You
I
know,
have,
you're like,
yes.
oh, I wonder who can judge themselves the most. Probably me. You know,
Yeah.
like, yeah.
Who can do the most stupidest thing in the group and you will get the most attention? Like,
Mhm.
it's like, he's basically saying, like, in this reality, we reward who's the stupidest. Like, and
Yes,
we
totally.
all sink into this energy.
Yep.
People compete to have, create, or generate unconsciousness.
Well, it's actually celebrated.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like, I think we really had this conversation too. Like, what I was starting to say is, like, everywhere you go, there's alcohol, but then you're just for drinking alcohol, you know, because it's everywhere. Like, what we are looking at, like, there's homeless people, and why are people homeless? Well, I don't know. Like, we're not here to solve, like, the world problems, but I think a lot of people are just so different. Then they cut themselves off from reality, and then they're like, oh, but they're insane. Like, so then you have, like, this category over here that's living in, like, their own world, but, you know, they're insane, or like they drink too much, or you do drugs. And when when you have, like, these judgments, they just feed themselves into, like, this vicious a cycle of more judgment and, like, more self. Gosh, it's like a deep dark hole, and this reality judges that, but then they condone it. It's like they
Yeah.
celebrate, you know, like the commercials and the whole thing. Yeah. So it's,
Ah,
yeah. Oh, did you hear my phone?
yeah. So
Yeah.
that's what this whole, like, key is about. The key to, like, I couldn't believe it when I actually started to read about this key, like the eight
Yeah.
key to freedom, because I knew that, like, no drugs of any kind was like, okay, I get that part, but, like, I didn't get the energy behind it until I read the chapter. And, like, that's what basically the energy is. Like, we give up us, we give up our being, we give up being, like, you give up being Becky, I give up being
Yeah.
Amy, you
Yeah.
all listening, you give up
Yeah.
who you are to join
Yeah.
the team of unconsciousness, which is called this reality.
Which is called this reality. Yeah, it's the separation. Or, like, you know, you try to, and I think that's where I was kind of going in, because there's so many other avenues, believe me. But we started with this conversation really looking at, like, the how they condone things, but then when you do it, you're wrong, and so
There's
there's
no
the
judgment
judgment
about
of it.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, you really have.
Consciousness.
Yeah, and so, you know, and so you either fit in or you separate. You know, and that's where I was really looking at, like, homeless
Yeah.
people, you know, like, but that's not what this is all about. But it's the way it works, where, like, you either do it or you separate. And there's actually something else that's possible. Like, you don't have to fit in or not fit in and then be, like, totally insane, or, you know, just like a sheep. There really truly is other choices. And that is actually, you know, having ease and having joy in your life, and then, you know, glory. And when you have when you're totally present, knowing what you know, being willing to just sort of create yourself differently in this reality, you're an anomaly. People are like, what do we do with this person?
And that's that piece where it's like, finding your own reality, like creating your own
Yeah.
reality. Yeah.
Yeah, because even with love, like, you know, I did bring that up. Like, is love an addiction? Is working out to a certain degree, you know, like, over, like, an addiction, or like an unconscious, that's like an unconscious choice. And so I wonder where, you know, where it's not just about drugs, it's not just about alcohol. Like, how many you know, things that do you separate from you from?
Yeah. And how many different types of drugs are you using to tone yourself down, to
Mm,
fit into the group, to not be too much, to not stand out, to not be too creative, too great,
yeah.
uh, too, like, fantastic, incredible, like what? And so I suppose I was going to ask you, like, if you could have anything, what are you asking? Because we're starting June the 1st. We're going to have 4 days of no unconsciousness of any kind. We're going to
Yeah.
be on a Zoom call and we'll go live into a Facebook group. It's only like
Yeah.
$55, right?
I think so.
So yes, $55.
That's not cheap.
So it's a challenge. We're doing it for us, and you're invited
Yeah.
if you play with us. But Becky, like I'd like to know, like, what are you asking for out of these 4 days of no unconsciousness of any kind?
Well, I want to say there's a couple things. There's one thing that I would always like to ask for is always to be out of judgment. Period. And that has I want to say within the last year, it's been really, really, really a big ask of mine. Like judgment isn't real. Like even the things that take you, like are you ever actually out of consciousness, or is it like you've decided things that separate you from you? You know, and like the stuff that we've been implanted with from this reality, which is you do judge you, you know? And so really like swiping that's kind of like unconscious judgment that I do that I know is not even mine, because judgment isn't real, right? It's like an invented thing to keep you um, small and addicted, and to keep you distracted. Because when you're distracted, you are not using the tools and creating your targets in your life, whatever those targets are. Like it could be something as like to be happy or to have joy, you know. But when judgment is a distraction. And so that, and then also, actually, I would love to, wow, I would love to know, even if I say I had some drinks or if who knows what I did, like, what gift is this to my life and my body? I would like to be able to acknowledge the gift and everything that I choose, because choice is creation. When you're choosing, you're in creation. Now, some choices might be creating crap. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like, it's up to you, you know, but when you're in choice, you're in creation. So like, what are the gifts of my choices? Yeah, I'll have that.
I like that.
Well, and truly, like this is we're diving deep into this, and I'm like me and Amy, like we're all in, and I think we ask like you, Amy, what are you looking for? And I know like for me now is the time.
Well, that everything you're asking for, I'll have that too. And then I would like to get really clear on this group think, like that piece in the book about the group think, where you give up you to join the team of unconsciousness. I would like to get really, really clear with me when I'm choosing that,
Me
and
too.
have a different possibility to
I'll have
not have
that.
to choose that. Like,
Yeah.
and that energy where I'm being me, I'm so too much, I'm too energetic, too happy, too like all that, and to not actually give that up to jump into the group.
Yeah.
And that's something I would really like to get clarity around and have more ease with.
Too.
Not dumbing myself down, not turning myself off, and not using anyone else's judgments or anyone else's reality as a distraction from me.
Yeah.
Being conscious, being aware, being present with me.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited about that group thing too, because the take I have on that is I notice a lot of times, and when I say group things, it's even when I'm in a restaurant, and I don't have to actually be with a group myself
Mhm.
particularly, but like when I'm in like crowds, I wonder, like, am I choosing for me, or is my body aware of um, everybody else?
Yeah. Yeah. And then do I like, do I dumb myself down to match them, or do I stay, expanded and elevated as I am and
Mm-hmm.
just be aware of everything?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Thanks, Becky. Thanks everyone for being here. So you're
Yeah,
welcome to
thank
join
you.
us. I put the link below. We're starting June the 1st if anybody wants to jump on this challenge with us. And I hope you got something out of today's live.
Yeah, yeah. If anything, there's some really cool questions and things that we grabbed out of this book. Even if you don't join us, look at this chapter and and ask those questions for yourself too. Like, do you judge you? And is now the time to change that? Yeah.
Guys, we'll see y'all soon.
Bye.
Bye.